This is the beginning of the story of Yaakov and Esav, Jacob and Esau. And here it talks about the pregnancy, which was very disturbing to Rebekah the mother, and she has a prophecy given to her through a messenger from a prophet. 2 nations are in your womb, 2 regimes, for instance, will be separated. You're bearing twins, and they're not going to be together. The might shall pass from one to the other, meaning that there's competition between them. When one's up, the other one's down. And the elder shall serve the younger. That's the message that she gets, and somehow that satisfies her. She's not disturbed anymore. We spoke about this last time in detail. So let's go on to 127. This now is the story of the birthright. When her term to bear grew full, she came to the end of her pregnancy, and she gave birth. Behold, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged, red, entirely like a hairy man. So they named him Esav, which is a play on words in Hebrew. After that, the brother emerged with his hand grasping on the heel of Esav. So there's a very dramatic scenario here. The older child is born, and it presumably comes out head first. So the last thing that comes out is the feet. And as the foot comes out, you see Yaakov's hand on his heel. And that they called his name Yaakov because in Hebrew, Akav is heel. So Yaakov is a usage of that name. Which means that when he's born, this idea of grasping on his brother's heel is something that's stamped into him. And those who follow the story out, through all their growth and development, this is a position that he has in life until there's a crisis, and then he transforms into a much different, higher purpose, higher condition, and the 2 conditions live side by side until he dies. And those 2 conditions become the conditions of the Jewish people. So this is just the beginning of the story, the beginning of the foundation. Now come 2 verses which we will have to study in great detail. The lads grew up, and Esav became one who knows trapping or hunting, a man of the field. In Hebrew it's and, though the men's sense may be but. Jacob was a wholesome man, abiding in tents. So, let's think about this for a moment. Notice that with respect to Esav it says became, whereas with Jacob it says was. That implies what about Esav? He changed. He didn't start out that way. He became someone who knows trapping or hunting. One wonders, what was he before? The verse is only hinting, doesn't tell you, but that's one thing that we'll have to consider. Now, the second part of this verse has 2 phrases. Each phrase has 3 parts. Esau, the name, knows trapping as an activity. Man of the field, this is locus. Jacob is the name. Wholesome man, so think about who he is. Abiding in tents, that's his locus, that's where he is. So you have 2 phrases, each with 3 parts, and the first and last are directly parallel. Name and name, and environment and environment. So that leads you to think, okay, it's like a contrast. Now what about the middle? Well, the middle says, knows trapping, and he's wholesome. Wholesome is a kind of moral and spiritual quality. It's a character quality. Hunting sounds like that's how he earns a living. Sounds like there's no obvious parallelism between the description of hunting on the one hand, even contrast, and being wholesome. But I just changed it. It doesn't say hunting, does it? What does it say? He knows hunting. That's not the same as doing the activity of hunting. It's that he knows hunting. Well, that's more about who he is rather than what he does. Now, what quality is necessary for hunting? Without this quality, your hunting will be fruitless. Think about all the different types of hunting that there are. There's one quality that must be achieved.
Killing.
Say again?
Killing.
Well, suppose you're hunting for the zoo.
What do you mean? Hunting for the zoo?
No, you're trapping and sell it to the zoo.
Oh.
You don't have to kill it. You don't have to kill the animal.
Well, then it's not hunting, it's capturing. Because hunting is kind of it's either a sport or a thing that you do to get food and sustenance. You hunt. Hunting was invented not to capture and keep, rather to kill and eat.
Well, actually, very old sources have pictures of people using animals for work.
Is it hunting?
Okay, I don't know how to. We're talking about a Hebrew word here, and the word in Hebrew means to deprive the thing of its freedom so that you can get your hands on it at will. You lock it up in a pen. That's called hunting, but doesn't imply why you're doing it.
Sorry, what's the question again?
So, what quality must a person have to be a successful hunter?
Maybe stealth.
Oh, why? Why stealth?
Well, otherwise the animal will get scared and run away.
Okay, so you've got to be able to fool the animal.
Cunning.
If you put out a trap in full vision, very few animals are going to walk into the trap. But if you cover it over with leaves and sticks and it's not visible, then the animal might stumble onto it and fall into it. That's right, you might do that. If you're going to shoot out birds with a bow and arrow, you'd better hide yourself, because if they see you, they'll fly away and you won't be able to shoot them. You better be downwind from the animal, not upwind, because if you're upwind, he'll smell you and he'll run away. You've got to be able to fool the animal. So nose hunting implies that he has this ability to fool, to deceive. And now the two phrases are much more parallel. It's name and name, Esav and Yaakov. And at the end it's field and tents. And in the middle it's knows hunting, and therefore he knows how to deceive, versus Yaakov, who's wholesome. And now you get a parallelism and a contrast in all three of them. You get a picture of his character. Yes, he was a hunter, but the verse goes out of its way to say not he hunts, but he knows hunting, to tell you something about his character. Okay, 28. Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth. Whose mouth? Isaac's mouth. It's that Esau, being a hunter, fed his father fresh game. It's not that Isaac loved Esau because Esau had a meat diet. That's not a reason to love anybody, let alone to love your son for that reason. No, his son honored him by providing him with fresh game. And Rebekah loved Jacob. So let's see. Let's start to analyze it this way. When it says Rebekah loved Jacob, should we conclude that Rebekah didn't love Esau? Let's see. Think of the whole verse. Think of the whole verse. Isaac loved Esau, for game was in his mouth, and Rebekah loved Jacob.
Yeah.
I mean, Esau and Yaakov are both there in the pasuk, right? It's only like 7 words. They're both there in the pasuk. If she loved both of them, wouldn't you expect it to say, and Rebekah loved Jacob and Esau, or Esau and Jacob? Why would you leave him out?
Because she liked his qualities.
Oh, that's a reason. But I'm asking something else. I'm something more primitive now. Just when it says she loved Jacob, shall I conclude that she didn't love Esau, didn't love him as much, at least, because he left out? Because if she loved them equally, and we're talking about parents and children and who loves who, it'd be funny if she really loves Esau, but it doesn't mention it. We're talking here about who loves who.
So why don't we say that about Yaakov?
Okay, so now let's go back to Isaac. It says Isaac loved Esau. Shall we conclude that Isaac didn't love Jacob? Now here, I want to just insist on a rule. You have to play fair. Don't use your extraneous knowledge. Don't use your prejudices. No, not Jacob. Surely Isaac loved Jacob. Jacob's wonderful. Let's read what the words say and analyze what the words say. The words say that Isaac loved Esau. Rebecca loved Jacob. We're saying, oh, she loved Jacob. It doesn't say Esau. She didn't love Esau. So shall we say that Isaac didn't love Jacob because it isn't mentioned? I think the answer is yes, but look carefully. What kind of love does the verse describe? Isaac loved Esau. Why?
Because he was the firstborn and he...
What does the verse say? It's written on the paper. You can't see it on my forehead. What does the verse say? Isaac loved Esau?
For game was in his mouth.
Isaac loved Esau for game was in his mouth. No, but he loved him because he was able to provide for Isaac.
Right. And now you could say, well, only Esau is mentioned. That's true. The only one Isaac loved for receiving fresh game from him was Esau. Isaac did not love Jacob for fresh game that he got from him. That's not true. Only Esau he loved for fresh game. In other words, I call this meat love. Isaac meat loved Esau, and only Esau. He didn't meat love Jacob. Doesn't say anything about fatherly love. That's not described here. The only thing that's described here is meat love. It is both halves of the sentence are exclusive. But with Rebecca, it's motherly love. She loves Jacob and not Esau. With Isaac, it's not fatherly love. It's meat love. And it's exclusive. The only one he has meat love for is Esau, not for Jacob. But that doesn't say anything about his feelings for him as a father to a son. That's not mentioned here. Okay?
Being a part of the same sentence doesn't matter.
I'm sorry?
Meaning, usually when a sentence is put together and you have something that correlates, like we're saying, Yitzchak loved Esau because he gave him game, right?
Right.
Then we say in the same sentence without really a fix, but Rivka loved Yaakov.
Yes.
So can't we just say that Yaakov gave her something that...
No.
No?
No.
You would have to say that.
Then you would say Isaac and Rebecca loved so-and-so for game. You'd put them both into the same subject. You wouldn't split them up like that. If in both cases the love was for game, you would say Isaac and Rebecca loved so-and-so for game. Or both of them for game. You wouldn't repeat it. So repeating it separates that out. Now comes the incident of the birthright. I'm going to read you through it. First of all, it's only 4 verses, and then we'll come back and we'll analyze it word for word. Starting with 29. Jacob simmered a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. Esau said to Jacob, "Pour into me now some of that very red stuff, for I am exhausted." He therefore called his name Edom, because Edom in Hebrew means red. Jacob said, "Sell as this day your birthright to me." Esau said, "Look, I'm going to die, so of what use to me is a birthright?" Jacob said, "Swear to me as this day." He swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob gave to Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank, got up and left. Thus Esau spurned the birthright. Now, I want to tell you how this plays in Peoria, Illinois, and Soweto, Johannesburg, South Africa, and Dresden, Germany, and all over the world, especially the Christian world. Esau comes in from the field and he's dying. He says to his brother, "Give me food. I'm dying." And his brother says to him, "You're dying? Die, worm! Who cares about you? Die! But I'm your brother. How can you do this to me? Save my life." "You want to live? Birthright. Let me have the birthright." And Esau says, "The birthright? It's my future. It's my whole life. What do you mean I have to give that up? Well, then die." "How could you do this to me? You're my brother." "But I don't want to die. If I'm going to die, what good to me is a birthright, and it's no good when you're dead." All right. And he sells it This means Jacob's putting pressure on Esau, who's dying, to give up the birthright, and that would be cheating him out of it, doing him a terrible injustice, victimizing him by getting the birthright from Esau in this fashion. That's the way it plays. In fact, there's one very famous philosopher, non-Jewish philosopher, for whom I have a great deal of respect, and he invented a term, Jacobean rationality, Jacob-style rationality, and that is to use other people's disadvantage to your advantage to be able to get something from them. So I want you to look at the words and tell me, first pass, from 29 through 34, is Esau dying? Is it true that he's dying? What do the words say? I mean, it says that he's exhausted, right? And then he repeats the word. He repeats the word exhausted. I know you come in from a whole day of soccer and you throw yourself on the couch and say, oh, I'm dead. But you don't mean get the undertaker. You just mean I'm very tired and I have to rest. Well, what about when he says, I'm dying, so what do I need? I'm going to die, sorry. He says, I'm going to die. What do I need the birthright for? What about that? Let me ask you a question. Does going to die mean the same thing as dying? Couldn't you say, well, we're all going to die sooner or later? Doesn't follow that we're all dying, does it? And in Hebrew, they're not the same words. Does any of you speak Hebrew? Know some Hebrew here? No. Well, there is a word for dying in Hebrew. And surprisingly to many people, that word is mace. Mace is usually translated as dead, but you have several instances of a person who says, I am mace, and therefore do X, Y, Z, or I want to give you a blessing, and so forth and so on. And he doesn't mean that he's just been resurrected and he get back from the grave. It means I'm dying. I'm in the process of dying. Esau doesn't say that. He doesn't say mace. He says holech lamus. Holech lamus means I'm going to die. Quite right. So he's not referring to the fact that he's dying at the moment. That's two. What about on the next page? What happens? Tell me in verse 34. Does verse 34 describe a person who's dying?
No.
Ate, drank, got up and left? Sounds like McDonald's. Fast food. He had a meal and took a powder.
Moses says that he spurned the birthday.
Oh, I'm coming to that. Okay. So that certainly doesn't sound like he's dying. Now, what does spurned mean?
Like he obtained it.
He what?
Obtained.
No, that's not what spurned means. In modern English, there's a wonderful song about with this phraseology. It means he kicked it away. It means he threw it away for nothing.
Oh, no, I read it wrong. I thought it said Jacob spurned it, so I thought that Jacob obtained it. No, but...
No, it's Esau. Esau. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. I see your logic. Okay. Esau spurned the birthright. Now, let's try to figure this out. Let's suppose he's really dying. And Jacob says, you want to stay alive? Give me the birthright. And he sells the birthright to live. Does that mean he's throwing it away, treating it as if it's worthless, treating it as of no value, degrading it? One of the queens of England on her deathbed said, my kingdom for another 5 minutes. Meaning, I'll give up my kingdom if I could live an extra 5 minutes. What good is the kingdom if you're going to die? That doesn't mean she didn't value her kingdom, but when you're on your deathbed, you trade it in order to stay alive. How could the story end with the words that he threw it away, kicked it away, treated it as garbage, when he traded it for his life? If he was really dying, you couldn't end the story that way.
Maybe he was really dying.
Oh, that's my point. My point is that he wasn't really dying. This is one of the 4 proofs that he wasn't really dying.
He's one of the most deceptive people in the Torah that we know of.
Right. He traded it for not to have to make supper. That's what he traded it for. That's spurning it.
Yeah.
That's throwing it away. You want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, like, he did to Esau, it wasn't of any worth. So
Exactly. Exactly. That's what the conclusion you have to draw. And that's why the Torah describes it as burning it, because he kicked it away, rather than have to go through the trouble of making supper when he was exhausted. He really wasn't dying. So this idea that you hear all over the world, that Jacob cheated a dying man, his own brother, it's just not true. The words don't say that. Yeah.
I'm a little confused. So you brought the soccer analogy, that it was like, whatever, he's exhausted, he comes in, it's like a figure of speech, like, oh, I'm dying from this workout, or
Yeah.
I assume it's the same way, it's like somebody's really frustrated, and like, oh, I'm gonna kill myself, this is so annoying, right?
That's right.
But I don't understand, he's not like a complete doofus, like he might be like a physically focused guy, but he knows the value of his birthright. Why would he trade it for food?
I'm sorry, you're right. We're putting together 2 points which were separate. He didn't say I'm dying. He didn't say it at all. I was just pointing out that people use this language very loosely. But he didn't say I'm dying. He said I'm going to die.
But do you mean he's saying that in the I came in from exercise way, or is he saying that in like I'll die one day?
Well,
I
look,
don't understand
let's take a look at the
why he would
words.
say that.
Let's take a look at the words together, okay? Let's go back to verse 29. Okay? Jacob simmered a stew, and Esau came in the field. He was exhausted. Esau said to Jacob, pour unto me now some of the very red stuff, for I am exhausted. So it's clear how he's describing himself. He doesn't say he's dying. He says, I'm exhausted. Ayef. Ayef really means tired in Hebrew. Okay, it could be very tired. So exhausted could be all right. But exhausted is not dying. So in the next verse, when Esau says in 32, look, I am going to die, he's not contradicting what he said before. So it can't be that he means I'm dying on the spot. He just said he's exhausted. He said that himself, that he's exhausted.
So it's like when somebody smokes a cigarette and somebody says, why do you smoke cigarettes? And you go, you gotta die from something? It's like that?
Mm-hmm.
So what is
Exactly.
the point of him saying this? There's no letter in the Torah that's useless.
Good, correct. Okay, so now here I want to make a point of logic before I answer your question. Let's say we didn't figure that out. So we didn't have any answer to that question. Still, I have 4 proofs he's not dying. So what I would say is, that's an unsolved problem, and we'll have to look up the literature and see if we can find an explanation for that. But I wouldn't change my mind and say he really is dying, because I have 4 proofs that he's not dying. Right? But when you have an unsolved problem, you have to decide what you should do about that. And not always do you say, well, if there's an unsolved problem, then everything I think is wrong, and I have to go back and start from scratch. And here, so now, what the question here is what is a birthright? What is it? So the general rule is that when a man dies, his oldest son takes over his place in the world. And the oldest son also gets a double portion of the inheritance. So if there are 4 sons, you divide the inheritance into 5 pieces. The oldest gets 2, and the other each get 1. So that's the idea of being getting the birthright. Now, who's Isaac? Who's going to die? Well, Isaac, the inheritor of Abraham, Isaac has a whole community of people that Abraham converted to the Jewish way of thinking, and he was running that community. And Esau said, forget about it. I'm not interested in running a community of people. I'm a hunter. I'm loose in the fields. I'm a free person. I do what I want. I choose my own projects. I don't want that. I'll prove this to you again in a minute from someplace else. But in the meantime, so he says, my life is from now until the grave. I'm looking at that life, what I want to do, what I want to accomplish, what kinds of life I want to have, and the birthright doesn't fit in. Since I'm going to die, and that's all there is to my life, this doesn't fit in, and therefore I'm not interested in it. And Jacob knew that. So this statement, look, I'm going to die, so what used to be the birthright is, just as he said, it's a statement of, I don't care about it. You want it? Okay with me. You're going to give me supper for nothing? Take it. So this is his attitude towards the birthright. Let me prove this to you. If you take a look on page 141. This is in a different story altogether. We worked on this last week for 2 days. I just wanted to show you a quote which proves what I'm saying now. The very top of the page is Esau talking to Isaac, accusing Jacob of being a criminal. And he says, he, Jacob, took away my birthright. That's what we just read. And see, now he took away my blessing. So Esau saying to his father, Jacob cheated me twice. He got my birthright before, and now he took away my blessing. That's what he says to his father. But now look down the page at verse 41 and tell me what you see. What does it say in verse 41?
Says that he was blessed, right? Or I can't. I'm not reading it right. I might have read it wrong.
What does it say about Esau?
Says he wants to kill Jacob.
No, but before that, at the beginning of 41.
He harbored hatred
Yes,
because of the blessing.
yes.
Oh, he's basically saying that, like, I lost my train of thought.
Okay, look back again at the top of the page, what it says at the top of the page, and compare with verse 41. This is a new skill, which I'm introducing you to.
So he has a. So Esau was blessed in some.
No,
way?
no. That's a blessing he gave to Jacob.
Okay.
What exactly am I?
Okay, to the top of the page, the top line of the page, Esau is expressing his complaint against Jacob.
Right.
What complaint does he make?
He complains that his birthright was taken away and his blessing was taken.
Right. 2 things. He complains that he lost 2 things. What does verse 41 say?
Verse 41 says, now Esau harbored hatred toward Jacob because of the blessing, because of the blessing
and not?
and not the birthright.
How about that?
So
The top of the page, he has a double complaint.
that shows that he doesn't care about the birthright.
That's it. That's it. The top of the page, he has a double complaint, but when it describes his hatred, what's going on in his heart, the birthright plays no role whatsoever. It's only the blessing. That shows you what his attitude was towards the birthright. When he's talking to his father and he wants to get his brother in trouble, so he says both. But really, inside, he didn't care about that. I mean, that's a proof on the page. So what you have back here is the idea that Jacob got the birthright because he's the one who's fit to step into the father's role. And that's why he wants it. But Esau was born first. So the idea of having his foot on Esau's heel is that Esau possesses something which doesn't really belong to him. It really should belong to Jacob. And he has to get it, Jacob has to get it by getting it from Esau. And now in Jacob's life, you have a sequence of events where it's the same thing over and over again. That something belongs to him by right, and there are forces that prevent it, and he has to use extra effort to get what really belongs to him. If you know the story of his marriage, where he worked for marry Rachel, and his father-in-law switched her for Leah, and he had to work an extra 7 years to get Rachel. He worked for wages, and his father-in-law changed his wages 100 times and cheated him out of the money, and the Chosh Baruch Hu had to do a miracle to give him the wages that he really earned, but he wasn't going to get. Over and over again, he gets what's really his because he has to make an extra effort not to be cheated out of it or not to lose it. And the blessing, which we saw last week, same thing. It's a blessing that Isaac wanted to give to Esau. Isaac made a mistake. He shouldn't have wanted to do that. Rebekah knew, so she created a plan, and Jacob got it by taking it from him. That's a theme in Jacob's life. Okay, we're together? Okay, now I want to show you how it is that Jacob graduates from this condition. In order to do that, I have to give you some background. This is a question now about names. Look on page 73. This is a famous passage, but like many passages, over familiarity makes it so you don't bother to think about it. I want verse 5, but let's start with verse 1 of chapter 17 to just get the background. When Avram was 99 years old, Hashem appeared to Avram and said to him, I am, it's one of his names, walk before me and be perfect. I will set my covenant between me and you. I'll increase you most exceedingly. You'll have lots and lots of children, lots of descendants. Avram threw himself on his face. God spoke with him, saying, so me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be a father of a multitude of nations. Now, 5. Your name shall no longer be called Avram. Your name shall be Avraham, adding a hey to the name. For I made you the father of a multitude of nations. Here is an address of Abraham's name. Something about Abraham's name. Again, your name shall no longer be called Avraham. Your name shall be Avraham. For I've made you the father of multitude of nations. That's Abraham. On the next page, verse 15, we have it with respect to Sarah. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name. Now I want you to look at these two verses, 5 and 15, and tell me what's happening to Avram's name and what's happening to Sarah's name. What's happening to the two names? I don't mean to imply that it's the same thing. It may be different things. What's happening to the names?
Being eradicated.
Hmm?
Being done with, like eradicated.
Eradicated. Okay, I think that's an interesting thought. In the end, the old name won't be used anymore. Only the new name will be used. I think that's correct. Still, well, maybe I shouldn't have said it exactly that way. Still, the transformation is not the same transformation in both cases. They're permanent. From then on, you only call him Avraham, and you only call her Sarah, rather than Sarai. But what happens is not the same thing. What happens in Abraham's case? What's going on there with his name? The name is being
Added to.
What's happening to the name? You shall no longer be called Avram. From now on, you'll be called Avraham. So the name is being replaced, changed. There was a name Avram. It was right for a while, but no longer. From now on, going to be Avraham. What does it say with Sarah in 15?
Call her name Sarai.
Does it say the same words in 16? In 15?
No.
So how is 15 different? What does 15 say?
Implies that Sarah was always on
Would you say it implies what?
Look at it and see if you try to figure it out.
The conditions for the name change are it's for completely different intentions, right?
Yes, but is it a name change?
No, I guess it's just sounds almost like a preference than a change.
Look again. Don't call her Sarai. Why shouldn't he call her Sarai? Because that's not her name. Don't call her Sarai. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. Don't call her Sarai because her name is Sarah. Surprise, surprise. You've been making a mistake all these years. That's not her name. You called her that, but it wasn't her name. Her name's not being changed. Her name is being revealed. And there's a beautiful kliyaka here. Explains a little about what's going on. If you look at the letters in the names, as I mentioned before, you have Avram. He gets a hey in the middle. Avraham. She goes from Sarai, with a yud at the end, to Sarah, which is her real name. Now you know that the letters have numerical values, right? So a yud is 10, and a hey is 5. So a yud is really 2 heys. So it comes out that since Sarah was her name, she was carrying around an extra hey, making her final letter, instead of a hey, a yud. Now that letter, that extra hey is being detached, her real name is being revealed, Sarah, and the extra hey is being given to Avraham, which means he gets that hey from her. What's a hey? So the Kliyaka quotes a famous verse. The world was created, the heavens and earth, with a hay. A hay is an instrument of creation. Avraham is receiving an instrument of creation from her. Now, you say, wait a minute, Rabbi. Let's think about their reproductive history up until this time. At 99 years of age, there's a difference. Avraham already has a son from Hagar named Yishmael. Sarah is barren. So isn't this a little funny? She's barren. She has the double hay, her hay and Avraham's hay. He has no hay. He has a son and she doesn't. How does that work, Rabbi? Doesn't sound correct according to the facts. And the answer is, sure. Avraham had a child, Yishmael, who's excluded, not part of the Jewish people, plays a role in the non-Jewish world. But the result of this double effect of the names is that Sarah becomes pregnant with Isaac, and he becomes born. And Avram wasn't ready yet to father Isaac. And he became ready to father Isaac when he received the hay of creation from Sarah. This is one of the many, many cases where you see Sarah's greatness, even greatness vis-a-vis Abraham. So here we have on these pages two applications of names. One, in Abraham's case, is a change of name, and the case of Sarah, it's a case of revelation of a name. Now, when we come to Jacob, it's a third thing. It's a third thing altogether. Let me show you what happens to Yaakov. Press this. $189? Let me see. Not when the Malach does it, because that doesn't work. It's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it. Yes, 189 is good. This verse is very difficult. What I'm going to tell you is partly the commentary of the Malbim. I don't know if I understand all of the Malbim, but I do understand part of it, and it solves our problem. Top of the page, 189. This is chapter 35, verse 9. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. Then God said to him, now here we go. Four phrases. Your name is Jacob. That's one. Your name shall not always be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. Item was thus, or then, he called his name Israel. So, roughly, what's being said here, it's based on a certain understanding of the meaning of the order of the words in Hebrew. The understanding here is your name is Jacob. That really is your name. You're not losing that. That sticks with you. Then there's something else, which is a future name. A name which will carry you into the future. A name which will in the future be your only name. It's your future essential name. That's Israel. Now if I stop there, so he says to himself, I'm Jacob now, and in 25 years, I'll become Israel or something. That's all that's being said. You have your present name, which is a real name, and there's another name which will carry you into the future. And then God calls him Israel on the spot. And from here on out, Jacob is called by both names, alternating back and forth. So this is really an addition of a name. This is a third different process. Now, people who work on literature talk about the fact that names are very important. Names are supposed to express the essence of the person, and any difference in names is a difference in who he is and what he's doing and what his challenges are and so forth and so on. And all of that is correct, but you have to pay attention to what is said. In Avram's case, it's like a break with the past. And in Sarah's case, there's no break whatsoever. She always is what she was, just that he didn't know what she was. And with Jacob's case, it's an addition. So his history of getting what he needs to get by taking it away from somebody else stays with him. Not only does it stay with him, but there are still times in the future where that may have to happen. But in addition to that, the word Yisrael contains in it the word Sar, which means like a prince or leader. It has God's name in it. It's someone to whom things come because of his internal greatness, because of internal preciousness. And there are times when things happen to him which he doesn't have to make an effort for whatsoever. He just has divine favor. And therefore he goes back and forth between these two aspects of his identity. And that's what he gives to the Jewish people. The Jewish people also go back and forth between those two aspects. Our history has positive and negative roles, and roughly they fit into the difference between the two names. So Jacob becomes the one whose life is the stamp of identity for the Jewish people. And this is very important to make sense out of the three of them. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah,
a clarification, please.
yeah.
Sorry, how is it possible that Sarah's name wasn't revealed, that it was always Sarah? And also, what does it mean about her essence?
So, Sarai in Hebrew, the I ending is a possessive, mine. So as if to say, it would be describing her relationship to him. Sarah is general, without any reference to a particular relationship. So there's a kind of princeliness about her, which isn't just the way she relates to Abraham, but about her essence. Her real name is much grander, much broader, much more elevated than the false name that she was called.
So you're saying that when she loses the letter, she becomes Sarah, that she's not quite as much of Abraham's possession anymore, and thereby comes into her own, and not barren anymore, or something like that?
I want to say this carefully. It's not as if the relation between the two of them is diluted, but he comes to appreciate much better who he's related to. Let's see if I can give you an example of this. Well, let's suppose that a woman is found in the forest, wandering and starving and so on and so on, and someone takes her in and provides for her and saves her life and shows her concern and good sentiment, and she decides to marry him, and they get married, and she's indebted to him, and she connects with him heart and soul, and then it turns out that she's really a princess. She was captured by kidnappers, and they were going to hold her for ransom in the forest. She managed to escape, but she was alone in the forest, and the person who found her didn't recognize her as the princess. So now it's not as if she says, okay, we'll get a divorce, I'll go back to the palace. No, she loves him and she wants to be with him. But now who knows he's married to a princess. So who she is and how he relates to her is going to be different. And her role in life and their interactions is going to be very different. So that's what's revealed to Abraham. And there are many sources of the greatness of Sarah, some of which come before this, and some of which come after this. So I think that's the idea. Her prince-like nature isn't just in a relationship to him. It has more facets than that, which means he's married to a much more precious person.
So he wasn't neglecting per se previously. She just
No.
got
He
more
just.
elevated.
That's right. When you get married, there are two terms that are used to express the joy of a marriage. One is simcha and one is sason. Simcha, the Gaon of Vilna says, is something you work for. You plan, you make the preparations, and then when the thing happens and your preparations come to fulfillment, you feel a great happiness that you're able to build this wonderful thing, and it came to success. Sason is things that are unexpected. Sas aruchi alim rasecha kamotze shalom rav. I rejoice on your words as someone who finds a great treasure. Usually, people who find great treasures aren't looking for them. They just happen to stumble on them, right? So we say when it comes to weddings, it comes to marriages, there'll be both. There'll be what you researched and what you decided upon together and what you planned together, and that definitely will give you great joy. But there will be unexpected discoveries also. And many of them will be very joyful. I didn't know that you could do that. I didn't know you were interested in that. I didn't know that that was meaningful to you. I didn't know that that was important to you. You'll find that you share things you didn't expect to share, and you'll also find that the things you don't share you can learn from, and you can grow from. In a really successful marriage, there's both sason and simcha. So here is more like the idea of sason, discovering something of which he was unaware, but something whose greatness enriches the relationship between them. It doesn't mean it was diluted or ignored before. It's a good point. Anyway, so this gives you a little picture of where Jacob is coming from and how it works. And I taught at university for 10 years, and the idea of reading carefully isn't taken for granted, and it isn't something which people are trained to do. If you're going to be a lawyer, presumably you should be able to read carefully. But people are not typically trained to do it, and it's something that's worthwhile. Something that's worthwhile. Both because of the legal lives that you will live, and also when people talk to you. People talk to you, be able to pay attention to their words, and be able to say exactly what they said, repeat it back, and say, listen, you said this, do you really mean it? If you didn't mean it, then change your words. Be able to pay attention to words and get them accurately is an important skill. And reading these texts is definitely a training in that skill. Okay, tomorrow's Q&A.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Inshallah.